recorded, so people can go back and see it later if they aren't able to watch right now. And I have a few official things I have to read at the start of the meeting, so I'll start with that once we get our little red light going.
Looks like Jeff just sent a message. Good to go when you are.
Recorded. All right, so we're good later if they aren't able to watch right now. All right, welcome everybody to the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for the Town of Westborough. I am going to read at the start of the meeting, Governor's Order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law 30A-18 and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Westborough Diversity and Inclusion Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at www.town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by watching on www.youtube.com/WestboroughTV or on Westborough TV at Verizon channels 28 or channel 192. Or the public may watch a recorded version on the website at westboroughTV.org under the government tab Meetings on Demand. No person in attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort is being made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means, Westborough TV. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording transcript or other record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. And the other piece that I want to make sure you know is that if we do have reason to vote today, we will do so by roll call, which means I will call on each of you individually and you will say your name and your vote of yes or no. And I don't know yet if we're going to have a vote today on anything. So we will officially start then with introductions, and I would ask that we go around. I'll call on each of you, and if you'll share your first and last name, your gender pronouns if you choose to, your option, and let us know your role, whether it's a role as related to the town or in the community. And then we'll go, and we have one more person joining us. And I'll start with myself. So I'm Kara Presley. I use pronouns she, her, and hers. I am the director of the town's Youth and Family Services Department. I also am the chairperson of this Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I became the chairperson actually only 2 meetings ago, but it's been a long time since we've met, so that was last fall. So it's been a good, probably 8 months or so, 9 months since I took over that role, but I am still new in the position. Mike, I'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Mike Daniels. I know some of you do know me. I go by the pronouns he, him, his. I am a sergeant with the Westborough Police Department. I supervise the midnight to 8 and 4 to 12 shift. I also am involved with some of the grant writing that goes on at the police department. I also am a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and I supervise our community policing unit. So I have a ton of things that I do, and I'm trying to kind of like focus, but that's me.
Shelby.
Sure. So good afternoon. My name is Shelby Marshall. I go by the pronouns, I'm still practicing these, she, her, hers. And I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen, also a parent in the community, and wear lots of other hats.
Sarah.
Hello, my name is Sarah Connors. I go by the pronouns she, her, hers, And I am an ESL teacher at Hastings Elementary. So I teach English from kindergarten to 3rd grade.
And thank you to Sarah, who's our newest member. She was appointed and sworn in all within the last 48 hours.
Yes.
Kim.
Hi, Kim Foster. I use pronouns she, her, hers. I am the assistant town manager and looking forward to getting the committee active again.
Rana.
Hi, I'm Rana Rappaport, what all the other women said. I've been actually not an appointed member, but I've been involved with the committee since its inception. And I am an actual member of the committee, and I'm a member of the community. I've been living in Westborough for 30 years and raised our children here.
Thank you. And Alma.
She's muted.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Alma, you're on mute. I think you know that. Here, I'll unmute you. There you go. Oops. Maybe not. You might have to unmute yourself.
Okay, there we go. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do 6 things at once here. I have great plans at the beginning of the day and people get in the way. My name is Alma DeMonch. I'm the director of the Senior Center. I've been here forever. I go she, her, hers, and I've been a member of this committee since its inception, actually. So.
And Alma generously volunteered to become the secretary for our committee a few meetings back. So she'll be taking notes today, and feel free, Alma, to interrupt us if you need clarification about anything that's said, because I know this is sort of a cumbersome process to be involved via video and take notes. So let us know if you need anything.
I will do the best I can. I have 2 more bags to write, and then I'm done with that project.
And then I'll support you in patching it together at the end too.
I think we all will. So
today's caregiver dinner day. So
yeah, it's a lot to keep track of. So Alma, just to let you know, since you missed this part, we are being live streamed on Westborough TV's YouTube channel, and this is being recorded for the public for later.
Okay.
And our one missing person is Maureen Amiot. She is the director of the library here in town, and she's been a longtime member of this committee as well. She's unable to be here today, and she sends her regrets. So that makes us 8 people, active and appointed members of the committee. We are slated to be a committee of 11 people. And as you recall, for the last 6 to 9 months, we've had a difficult time. Well, for the last few months, we've been on hiatus, but prior to that, we were having a difficult time getting a quorum to the table. So we had to reschedule or cancel several meetings. And the plan was just before the pandemic hit was to figure out ways to reconfigure this meeting to make it more accessible for members to attend more consistently. But then the pandemic hit, and we just kind of stayed on hiatus without making any change. At the time of recent events, which is, we're going to approve the minutes in just a second, but because of all the recent events, we decided, let's just give it a try. Let's reconvene and see what we do. We may or may not figure out a way to reconfigure this. We'll talk a little bit about that today and continue that conversation into future meetings. But meanwhile, oh, we do have a vote. We need to approve minutes. So I sent to you in the packet prior to this meeting minutes from our last official meeting, which was in October 15th. So hopefully you've all had a chance to review those.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from October 15, 2019.
Thank you, Shelby, for the motion. Do anybody want to second that motion? Rana seconds. So let's do a vote. I'm going to call each of you by name, and then you say your name and say yes or no. Mike?
Michael Daniels, and I vote yes.
Shelby?
Marshall, yes.
Sarah?
Sarah Connors, yes.
Kim?
Foster, yes.
Rana?
Rana Rappaport, yes.
And Alma?
Alma DeMonch, yes.
And Kara Presley, yes. So those are officially approved. So yeah, bringing us back to why we're here and why now. I think that all of us are very well aware of everything that's going on in the world today. In the media, the last 3 weeks, we have been made really aware of the high profile deaths of several Black American citizens who died in the hands of police, and the rallying cry in the aftermath of that to pay attention to the Black Lives Matter movement, to bring our attention to the disproportionate deaths of Black and brown people at the hands of police, but also looking at the experience of Black and brown people in this country of racism in a systemic way, and the way that people's lives are impacted every day. And Westborough has been touched by this, just like every part of the country. And while the issues here may or may not involve the police in the same way it has in these high profile cases, we have a lot of people in this town who are saying this is really important to us. We're recognizing that we need to step up. White people in this community and around the country are saying that we recognize the impact of systemic racism and the role that we play in that, and we want to make some changes. And with the momentum that has come with that, it has come here too. And I myself felt compelled to get this committee up and going in light of all of these events, but I also haven't been called upon by a number of people in the community to say, you know, what's happening with this committee? Can we get it up and running? And so we have support both from community members and from town officials to get this work going again. So that's sort of the why now piece of that. I want to say that with all of those events and with the reality of recognizing on a grand scale the impact that racism is having in this country, it is also requiring us to look at how racism is impacting the work that we do every day, including the work that brings us to this committee. This committee was formed to review town services, is sort of the mission or the purpose, I guess I should say, just to quote, of this committee is to review town services to ensure services are provided equally and are accessible to all residents, and to further identify ways to promote increased diversity and inclusiveness in town services, employment, and volunteer opportunities. So it's a pretty broad statement of what the charge of this committee is. This committee is not a decision-making committee in that we do not directly decide policy procedure in the town of Westborough, but we do have the power and influence to make recommendations to the town administration, to the Board of Selectmen for changes that may need to be made towards this purpose.
Alma, could you just mute your line?
I got
Thank
her
you.
muted,
Thanks.
so there we go. And so it is pretty broad in its purview in the way that it's stated. I think what I want to clarify for the purposes of us moving forward and figuring out the work that we have to do ahead of us concretely is that under that, our jurisdiction falls the town in general. We are not going to be talking specifically about policies and procedures of the police department in this meeting. We are not going to be talking specifically about policies and procedures of the school department in this meeting. It is not to say that we can't broach those topics, that those are they are not off limits topics of these meetings. I don't want to say what we can and cannot speak about, but just the power that we have to influence is limited in those areas. I understand, and Kim and Shelby, feel free to chime in about this, that the Board of Selectmen is specifically working with the police chief, with Chief Jeff Laurie and the department, looking at their policies and procedures, and especially as they relate to issues of equity and inclusion and racial bias. And I certainly know that that this is something that Superintendent Amber Bach and folks in her leadership team are paying attention to very closely. I also think they care about what we say, so that if we have things to share with them that might impact the work that they're doing, that will matter, but that won't be the focus of what we talk about in this meeting. Would anybody else like to comment on that or ask questions or seek clarification? So go ahead, Rana, please.
Do you want people to raise their hands or just chime in?
I'm comfortable with both. I don't feel the need for the formality of calling on you, but just because of the weirdness of Zoom, it probably will help me to know that you want to talk if you raise your hand. So
here I am.
There you go, Rana.
So I love the idea that police policies, et cetera, are being reviewed. I wonder how we can bring this to the community at large and how they're actually going to find out about this. So I just wrote myself a note. Wouldn't it be great to have workshops or open lectures? And then I realized, how could you possibly have workshops or open lectures? So here I am suggesting that we try to figure out a way to make it so that everybody knows what's going on.
So that is on our agenda for this meeting, is to talk about how to engage the community in those conversations. So we will talk about just that. Mike.
Yeah, no, so Rana, we've been, as I said before the meeting started, we've been getting a lot of requests from people out in the community, obviously they're concerned. We're getting requests people want to know, how are we handling, our anti-bias training, our policies and procedures. And what I find personally with the police department is that we've already kind of started the process of going over, and I think that's important. I don't want people to think that, because these things happened, now we're looking into policy review. One of Chief Laurie's, messages to us when he first came on board was he wanted to look at our antiquated policies and go through the accreditation process. So that's kind of where we're going with that. I don't know exactly what his plan is with it, but we've been working diligently on it. So just to clarify, I just don't want people, because I know sometimes, people are like, oh, well, this is in response to, but we've been proactive. And those of you that know Chief Laurie, he's very aggressive in trying to pursue things that, especially, policy supervision and things like that. So, but yeah, so I just wanted to add that just so everyone knows.
I can say that too, in my role as Youth and Family Services Director, I've been in conversation with both Chief Laurie and Superintendent Bach about ways that we can collaborate as leaders in the town to continue formal conversation about these issues, both with each other and in communication with the public. And while we have no concrete plan laid out at this time, I know that's a conversation that we will keep going, and that might be influenced by the work of this group too. So there'll be no I don't see any silos happening between the work that the police department's doing, the school department's doing, and that we're doing. And I also think, like with the Board of Selectmen, I would request and encourage and ask that the Board of Selectmen also keep this committee in the loop of what conversations they're having with the police, because I do think that we will be called upon as a committee, a kind of public facing committee to speak to that. Yes, Shelby.
Yeah, so I view, any committee, any town department leader, member of the town, you're sort of they're open to public input, right? And I would encourage any resident to do that, particularly through our department heads. So if you have a question about DPW, you reach out to, that department. If you have a question about youth and family services related matters, Kara, Julia are your folks. However, in reality, I think that sometimes that can be an intimidating process, regardless of who you are. And so, even though I consider all of us on Board of Selectmen very nice, sometimes it takes a lot for someone to put pen to paper, in particular because now someone knows your email address and maybe they'll know your name. I hope that this committee will be sort of that gateway for the community to feel comfortable with the representation that's currently on this committee, as well as what I would hope is that we can expand that in some way through our work. And maybe there are particular areas of interest where members of the community say, I want to be part of that and I want to contribute in some way. But I view this committee as maybe sort of an easier way for the public to connect on matters that pertain to what's in the scope of this committee, and then it's, quite frankly, maybe it's just less intimidating than other pathways, even though, again, everyone tries to be friendly and helpful. I think the intent of this committee and kind of its openness to the community is critical. And Raina, I will also emphasize, or echo, excuse me, what you said. I think education is, speaking for myself, is so critically important to unraveling these tangled and complex concepts, no matter what they are. I think creating a safe place for the community to have those discussions and understanding, I very much see as the mission of this committee and in line with its mission.
And education is the topic on our agenda today as well. The one thing that's not a topic on our agenda that I just want to put a placeholder in for our next meeting is to talk about the membership of this committee. As we said, it's a committee of 11. It was originally established, and correct me if I'm wrong, those of you who've been around for the whole tenure, as a committee that was mostly made up of representatives from town departments, because of that piece of like looking to town departments to be accountable for diversity and inclusion and equity within the government, with then 2 community members. So it was 2 community members and 9 representatives of town government. There's no specific thing that says it has to be that way. There is reasons why it is that way. We have talked here and there about changing that. Not going to make that a point of discussion today, but I guess I just request that as part of our next steps, let's each think about what are, the benefits of keeping it the way things are, the potential pros and cons of making changes, and what those changes might be. And we'll put that on the agenda for an upcoming meeting. Does that sound okay to folks? Okay, good. Alma, did you want to say something? You're on mute.
No, I'm not. I think when this all first started, we had a lot more representation from local clergy. We had some members from the Muslim group that meets, I don't know if they're still meeting at the Knights of Columbus. We had some folks from the Sikh temple. I forget, Ronnie, you remember, we had a lot more representation from local clergy that
It was lovely. There was a whole bunch of diversity.
Yeah.
Pastor from the Lutheran Church, Rachel Gurevich from B'nai. I mean, there were different people who, there was a lot of community that was involved as opposed to town representatives. It was really very nice.
Yeah, it was. It was nice to see different people.
Yeah, and I want to find a way that we can have that representation again. It has always been the formally appointed members have been those 9 government representatives and 2 community representatives, but the format that you held, in which you held the meetings, really invited the public to attend and participate. And if we were meeting live in person right now, we'd have a natural opportunity for that to happen again. Because we're reconvening like this, we're gonna have to get creative about how to engage those folks. Rana.
So if people, I don't know if people are going to be watching this or if they are watching this now or listening, would it be incumbent upon us to say, if you think you might be interested, maybe you could submit a request and just tell us a little bit about yourself? Or is that not appropriate to do it? Maybe this is actually a time when people are paying attention and might actually come forward.
Well, what I'll say is that without soliciting formal inquiries to become a member, I will ask that any members of the public who are watching this that want to become more involved in any capacity, whether formally or informally, just call or email me. My email is cpresley, so CPRESLEY at town.westborough.ma.us. And you can reach me at the Youth and Family Services office, which is 508-366-3090. And you're welcome to call me or email me, and we'll talk about what that would look like. Tell me about yourself, tell me about your interest. I can bring that to this committee at our next meeting, and we can explore ways to grow membership. Shelby.
Yeah, I think once this committee starts bringing some kind of content and I don't mean necessarily a program, but some a framework maybe is a better word to the community. And people sort of need to. Most people, I think, aren't prone to just jumping in the kind of in the water and saying, well, let me try this out. So I think once we give them a framework that kind of starts to further shape the work of this committee, I think my sense is people will want to be part of it. And so when we start talking about specific issues, or we announce that the next meeting we're going to talk about a particular idea or what have you, I think that's where sort of that natural grassroots effort comes forth. But I also think we should all be kind of on the lookout as we encounter folks and engage with the public, of course, 6 feet away with a mask on, to see, who may be interested, in this, and so, and to talk about it. But I think we have to further, kind of really, our framework has to evolve a bit, because I just think we've probably lost some folks over time just because we've meandered versus being, focused.
And thank you for that segue. Perfect segue to talk about, what are we going to do now? So, we talked a little bit about what we're not doing, right? We're not doing police, we're not doing schools, but we do have a lot within the context of the rest of town government to work with. And we've already gotten started with some things, but our group, the way I understand it, and please chime in with your understandings, is really to act upon issues that are brought to our attention by the public that have to do with issues of diversity, inclusion, like 2 of them that we're going to talk about today in just a second. And for us, I also see our role is to proactively identify needs, gaps, inequities in our existing government policies, procedures, practices. We've started doing this. It's been a long time since we met, but you know how we've started talking about language access? Well, I am proud to report that since we last met, we've made some progress in this area, which is awesome. And I know Sarah will hopefully be pleased, because Sarah works so much with many of our families who are English language learners or non-English speakers. And in the Youth and Family Services Department, just as an example, we have been for quite some time using an interpreter service that we use both on the phone and during in-person sessions to be able to have formal and informal conversations with people in any language, sort of on demand. And we've built that into our budget, and it is a very natural way of the way we're working now. During the pandemic, I have represented my department as part of the COVID-19 task force that's been established by the town. Shelby, Kim, Alma, and I are all part of that task force as well. And as part of that task force, the town started a COVID information line that any resident or community member can call and get information and get connected to resources. And with the start of that information line, the town manager's office, who staffs that information line, is now also using the telephonic interpretation service. And we also created a resource list as part of that task force, which has been translated into 4 different languages and widely distributed. So, we're making progress. And that's a great example of things that we're already doing, and the kind of thing that we can continue to do. Kim is the human resources person for the town employees. She and I have talked about, how issues of human resource types of policies and procedures relate to equity and inclusion, and what it might look like for us to look at those policies or other things. I don't think we need to dig anything up right now. There's a lot on our plate. I'm going to now introduce you to proposals that residents have already brought forward to us for consideration. And then we want to just keep paying attention and plugging along. And I agree, Shelby, as we get going with some of these issues, we're going to draw interest, we're going to draw participation, and we'll figure out a way that we can systematically do that, like really engage the public around those issues. So I sent you, I named a couple of issues in the agenda that we want to talk about. One I have just a little bit of information about, and one I have more. We'll start with the one I have less information about, and maybe a couple of you can speak to it a little bit more. Town Manager Christy Williams reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and let me know that there was at least one resident, and I don't know if this was multiple residents, who had come to the town leadership to say that they want to explore looking at the town seal that we have and having the picture, the image of a cotton gin removed from the seal. That cotton gin is on that seal right now. I don't have the intention to get into a discussion in this particular meeting about the history behind that, but I think we can. But I kind of just want to put that on the table for the moment and just say that has been proposed, and let's see how much we want to talk about it. Rana.
I think it's pretty easy because Eli Whitney
go ahead.
came to the town, and I think, to the best of my knowledge, he invented the cotton gin, so that's probably why it's on the.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then the controversy about that, if you don't know the controversy, is that
it has to do with slaves.
Right. So there's lots of historic context of it that weighs into this piece about systemic racism. And, but I don't know more about the context in which this proposal has been brought up, other than that it has been proposed. So I don't know if Kim or Shelby have any more information about that than I do. For now, that's all I know.
I think the cotton gin I don't know, my personal opinion, I think it more has to do with the Industrial Revolution than it does have to do with slavery. That's it was invented for that reason. I don't know.
Go ahead, Shelby.
So I think that, one, the issue has been raised by a resident. Two, the Board of Selectmen are aware of it, and the individuals who have brought this to the Board of Selectmen's attention have been sort of advised of what the process would be. My understanding is that, in order for a town seal to be changed, it actually has to go before town meeting, or the legislative body. In that case, here in Westborough, that's the legislative body would be town meeting, and the warrant is set by the Board of Selectmen, but certainly petitioners can get enough signatures and add articles to that. We know that. So I think that the good news is that there are several groups, if you will, now aware of this, number one. Number two, I feel like, when it came to me, I was Google, of course, is the source of all things, and I Googled it, and I learned more in about 7 minutes of reading than I think I may have learned, in all of my education, or at least what I remember, since school was so long ago. And I only bring that up because I think, again, I'm going to go back to education. I think if this committee is going to talk about this matter and bring forward a recommendation to support or not support, or bring forward its views to the selectmen and the town, because ultimately, sort of, if we think about the progression of this, I think we need to be educated on it in a way that is factual. It's also, I think, emotional for people, because there are people that still live here who are relatives of Eli Whitney, right? So if all of a sudden you're taking this off, it becomes very emotional. So we have a street named after Eli Whitney, right? So I think we have to ground these discussions not in, well, I kind of knew this or that. It has to be kind of almost like I want to be educated. I want a presentation that says, this is what it is, and understand because of this, it connects to this, it connects to that. And I think in doing that myself, I sort of take a step back and go, interesting. Like before I would have gone, okay, it's on there, and but so I think that that's critical. So therefore I would say, I don't know that we can have a discussion about that today. I think it's important that this committee knows it's been brought forward. Kim, you might have to help me. I think it's at our next meeting, the 23rd. The individual is coming to our meeting. I don't have it right in front of me to present to the Board of Selectmen.
I don't know for fact. I can see if I can pull up the agenda.
Okay, I don't have it in front of me. It's soon. So I think it's important that this committee is aware of that. That's that tie-in, and that you watch the meeting. What else do you have to do on a Tuesday night, right? And start to hear that, and then this committee says, well, we need to be more educated in order to bring forward a recommendation. That's sort of how process-wise that I see this moving forward, because there's a lot of history, I think, that a lot of us don't know, or I shouldn't assume that that's not fair. I know there's a lot I don't know.
Thank you, Shelby. And that you very well summarized why I don't know that this is the forum today at this time to get into a lengthy discussion about the why or why nots of doing that. But on the agenda today, as you know, is also to talk about getting training and education for us and beyond us. And I think we need that specifically to whatever issues are brought to our attention that we need to make recommendations upon. We need to be very thoughtful and judicious in how we approach anything that's proposed to us, but also for the larger purpose of being able to have thoughtful, educated, informed discussions about any issues that come to us that relate to issues of equity, inclusion, diversity, privilege, power, systemic racism. These are huge and heavy issues that are laden with lots of emotion for a lot of people. It is personal, and it has to do with, it impacts us as professionals. We want to have integrity with the decisions that we're making as individuals and as part of this committee. And so I think any of these things, we want to have these discussions. We will have these discussions. I will intentionally facilitate these discussions, and we want to do it in the context of being educated. So I will talk about how do we get that education. So that is a conversation we'll have today. So for that purpose, for that moment, I think that I would say let's find out more about when and what the Board of Selectmen is going to hear about this, and let's get in the loop. So at least I will, if not any or all of us, will watch that Board of Selectmen meeting and learn more about the proposal. And then we'll talk a little bit later today about how to get some of that education going so that we come to the next conversation feeling a bit more informed. Does that sound okay? Any other comments on the issue of the cotton gin on the seal at this time? To be continued. So yes, Shelby.
I will say that when I was made aware of it, I did ask our town manager to begin to take an inventory of where is this on our in our town. So for example, is it on vehicles? Is it on letterhead? Is it on I know that it's on patches. Like, where is it, so that we have sort of and again, I go back to my process orientation, so we have an inventory, because the reality of it is that particularly right now is like budgets are super, super tight. And so while we might have ultimately decide that that's the right process to go down as a town, there's going to be a way in which we sort of identify it's going to cost X to do Y. Mm-hmm. And we might want to do it all in one day, but that just might not be fiscally responsible. And so I think understanding how prevalent is that and where is it is just an important part of that kind of process. And there are probably many other things I haven't even thought of, but we need to understand that.
Yeah. Thank you for that kind of reminder of the procedural part of this, making changes. All right, so the second issue I have a little bit more information on, and I sent to you an email and a letter that was sent to us by a resident, Sarah McCabe. Sarah reached out to me having done some search on the website, finding out that I was the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and sent those letters to me. We had a little bit of a dialogue back and forth. In the process, just full disclosure, we realized that Sarah McCabe and I used to work together. I used to work at Wayside Youth and Family Support Network in Framingham, and she works there as well. And we had some interfacing in that job. And actually, the main way that we interacted, interestingly, was around issues of diversity and inclusion and talking about that at that workplace at the time. So it's funny, a fun full circle realization. And it just so happened I was the right person here for her to reach out to. So I told Sarah that I would start the process by introducing her proposal to this committee. I have also so just to mention, so the public knows what I'm talking about, Sarah McCabe, a Westborough resident who's also a parent of two Westborough schools children, has proposed that the town of Westborough, as well as the school district, change the holiday, which we now recognize as Columbus Day, the October holiday, to become a recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day. This is something that other municipalities have done, other school districts have done. Sarah has articulated really clearly in her proposal, her letter of intent, as she has described it, that the origins of Columbus Day and the history of Christopher Columbus includes a strong tie to some of the racist roots of colonization in this country, and as a means to honor the Native American people who were living in this country when Columbus and other colonists arrived. That this is one small way in which we can honor what the Native people endured, and to take away some of the attention given to Columbus, given his controversial history. So Sarah has made this proposal. She has started a petition. I have not checked. There's a link in what I sent to you to the petition.
About 253 people as of this afternoon have
Is that right? Okay.
signed the link that I saw.
Just so I can since you saw it, I can let the public know too. The petition can be seen at, the URL is http://chng.it/s as in Sam 9, M as in Mary 7, S as in Sam 9, C, N as in Nancy. So if anybody wants to see that petition.
And you can tell me all of that later, because I gave up trying to write that down.
Totally. It is in the email that I sent out today with the link to this meeting. So you should be able to see that pretty easily. And I'd be happy to send it to you and add it to the minutes as well.
So Kara, how do we take something like this where we have a formal petition before us? I think it's important that this committee at this point not take a position other than informing the public that the petition is out there. So I think it's clear. I think it should be clear that we're not saying go sign a petition, because I don't think that's the purpose of this committee. How do we take this information, which is informative, but I immediately said, tell me more. And I don't know if there's, I did a little bit of Googling and watched some videos earlier today on this to learn a little bit more. But do you have some thoughts about how this committee would view this and then ultimately maybe come out in a position of support or recommendation?
Rana, you
I
start.
don't see a reason why we can't have a collective announcement or agreement as to what we think of the idea. I think that this has been something that has been talked about quite a lot in recent years. It's been written about in recent years. I think one of the things that has happened in the Black Lives Matter protest, which I thought was interesting, was the toppling of a Columbus statue in Boston, I believe. Clearly, it's raised tempers to whatever extent. So I myself, but I could be wrong procedurally, I don't see any reason why we can't take,
You need me?
express our opinion as a committee.
Kim.
I think to Shelby's question, perhaps maybe from a process standpoint and better understanding, we could potentially invite the, I'm sorry, I have the letter up. I just want to get her name correct. Sarah McCabe. We could invite her to the meeting and have her perhaps tell us more. I think that's an appropriate, while the meetings aren't open to the public, we can certainly invite speakers in to educate and inform us.
Can
I agree. Yes, Alma.
Okay, so Columbus Day is a federal holiday. So I think it would behoove us before, I don't think the Board of Selectmen in the town of Westborough can change the name of a federal holiday, but I suspect that there probably is some discussion about this on the state and maybe federal level. So maybe it would behoove us to contact our state representatives and maybe our congressmen and find out what, if anything, is happening with this. And maybe it would just be that the town of Westborough supports this, as opposed to us. Like I said, I'm not sure the Board of Selectmen can change the name of a federal holiday, but I suspect that this is going to happen. I mean, this will happen because a lot of places are talking about it.
Well, I think
So just logistically, the way it works is, well, we would never, we do not have the power to take away a federal holiday. Westborough leadership does have the power to say we are not going to acknowledge that holiday, and instead we're going to identify our own holiday, which is this increasingly wider recognized celebration of our Indigenous people. So that is the way it works logistically. I do think it still is a great idea to find out what is happening on a state level, like a regional and state level, what kinds of legislation has been brought forth, or what kinds of proposals are on a state level to address this. I think you're right, Alma. I have no doubt that that is happening. So that might be an area for us to do some research. I agree, Kim. I think a very logical next step for this group is to invite Sarah to come. And I think she may have done this in part in conjunction with one or two other people. So to invite her and or one or two other people to come to the meeting to tell us, give us more history, tell us more. And again, the next agenda item we'll talk about is about how to boost our education as committee members to understand a little bit more about the historical context of this proposal.
And I'd be happy to contact Congressman McGovern's office and also even Senator Warren and Senator Markey, and also our state reps, to find out if there's discussion about this federally or statewide.
Thank you, Alma.
Thank you, Alma.
Yeah. So in addition to those two, it's okay. In addition to those two steps, what other, so the two steps being inviting Sarah to come and speak to us, Alma doing some research about what's happening on a state and federal level. And then I guess the third step with us increasing our education about it. Are there any other things that you all see as our next steps as a committee to address this particular proposal?
So I think that there are a couple of communities, Cambridge, Brookline, Somerville, Amherst, Northampton, as of 2018 and earlier, that had adopted this. So I'm wondering if perhaps Kim, through her network and connections with other town managers, assistant town managers, might explore if there are other communities since then that have kind of adopted this. Particularly, I think about our data dashboard community. That's a continual reference of communities we continue to go back to, just to see whether or not they've found those. We could probably just search for that on the web. I also would add that I think that Sarah, you're on as the school's representative. It seems like this will have could potentially have it will have a direct connection to the school calendar. I mean, as simple as what do we call it? So we would need to understand what the school or school committee's view is on this petition. We can obviously make our own decisions and recommendations, as was already stated, but I think just understanding, is it as simple as changing something on a calendar, or is there a curriculum impact? I mean, those are the things that I would want to understand.
I will say, as a teacher, in the last couple of years, it has become more difficult to teach about Columbus Day. As adults, we tend to know more information, and to first graders, we still teach about the things that we learned about in school. So it has become more difficult in the last couple of years teaching the students that while we still know all of this other information. But I can definitely reach out to people that I know in the school district and see how they would feel if we would have to change the name, if we would still have it off. I can let you guys know.
I have also, before this meeting, I forwarded the petition and the proposal to Superintendent Bach, letting her know that this was coming before this committee today. As you saw in Sarah McCabe's letter, she is recommending that the change be recognized both by the town and by the district. So because, as we talked about earlier, our jurisdiction doesn't quite stretch to the school district, I let Amber know that is on our radar, and I expect that we'll hear some looping back from her. So between what information you gather, Sarah Connors, and what Amber has to say about it, we should be able to bring some information from the school perspective back here too.
Great.
I felt like when I was offering up Kim's time and services, she was trying to say something.
Oops. No, all I was going to say is Alma mentioned contacting our legislative delegation, but I would also reach out through the Mass Municipal Association if there is an effort to, depending on the number of communities that are looking at this, is it reaching a level where it's being discussed at the state level? When you have 351 cities and towns all having to do this on their own, sometimes it gets to the point where there's enough interest to have it handled at the state level. So I can certainly follow up and get more information that way. And also I can try to get a better sense of the, potential process, as you've said, what are the implications of, changing the name and potentially having to still, from the federal standpoint, it remains, but what might that look like and what might it actually mean?
I have to say, on a personal level, this makes me feel very excited, because this is like we're each taking our little parts to do the homework to figure out how we can make a really informed recommendation about this topic. And it's in response to, someone coming forward from the community. So love it. It's good collaboration. So yay us.
One thing I just wanted to mention, I think it's important when we have folks and provide an opportunity for proponents of proposals to speak, that we make sure, even if we as a committee might all agree, to make sure we have and are providing, being inclusive to hear if there are other viewpoints on the matter. So, we need to probably, as we move forward in this, figure out what that might look like. How would we get sort of the counterpoints?
Thank you. You all are setting me up for the most perfect segues for each point of this conversation. I don't want to take us automatically off of the topic of the resident proposals before I segue. So let me see if there's any other closing of the loop on those topics that you want to do. All right, I will invite Sarah McCabe to come to our next meeting if you think that it's appropriate for us to do that at the next meeting. Okay, good.
Kara, can I ask though, to Kim's point,
Yeah.
Will the goal be to have someone that might want to provide a counterpoint at that same meeting? I'm just trying to think of the timeline in which we're going to kind of review this one topic if we're only meeting once a month.
I know. I think that it might behoove, I guess my recommendation is to just bring Sarah because she's the one who brought the proposal at this time, and to also bring forward all of the information that we've gathered in these little pieces that we're each going to do. And then to decide at that point what our next step is to bring, to invite, I mean, one of the things we're going to talk about is how do we invite input on all of these things, whether that is through some offline forum, or through an added meeting, like a in between regular meetings, special meeting of our committee. I think there's a variety of ways we could do it, but my recommendation at this point is just to have our feedback and Sarah come for this next step.
Kara, also, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Kara,
Mike.
do we also want to do something with the town seal as well? I mean, those are kind of the same topic, I think, you know, so what are your thoughts?
So my thought on the town seal is, one, we need more information. If whether it's from the town, sorry, there's construction outside my house. Whether it's Kim from the town manager's office or Shelby from the board, if we have more information about the specific asks, are these just passing conversations that residents have said, we need to take it off the seal, or is there more to it? Has there been a proposal? Is there any further context of how this came to your attention that we could bring? Certainly I want us to educate ourselves, and that's what we're going to talk about next, but I don't know what the next steps would be.
Go ahead, Kim, go ahead.
No, I think if, you know, in this case with the letter from Sarah, there's a clear proponent of this, and with the town seal, if there is someone coming to the board meeting and that individual wants to act in that role, perhaps we invite that individual. It may depend on, you know, does this committee in a way become the proponent, or at least research and sort of put together something. And so Mike, maybe depending on how things go next week, and if we do have someone coming in and speaking to the board who might be interested in speaking to this group, maybe we also invite that individual to the next meeting.
Well, I don't want to open a whole can of worms, but I tend to do that well, so why not, right? You know, maybe we somehow figure a way. I mean, I would hate for the proponent to have to go to 2 meetings to speak. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but whether or not there's an opportunity for this committee to attend informally or formally with the Board of Selectmen for that specific item, I would have to talk with Christy. I was just trying to look up to see if we have that on what the timing is on the agenda. I don't recall offhand, but I mean, we've had other Board of Selectmen meetings where the you know, other boards have attended at the same time and called it a meeting so that they could be part of the discussion. And then the Board of Selectmen benefits from hearing this committee's thoughts on that. So, but either way, I think this committee should certainly tune into that meeting, if not formally invited.
I mean, at the very least, I'm volunteering to attend. I would attend for the purposes no other than just to listen, to be a listener, to gather information.
I feel like
Kim?
at this point, I would need more information. So I'm not necessarily sure it needs to be a joint meeting. Personally, I'd like to be better informed before actually weighing in on the conversation.
And we don't need to set the agenda for our meeting until right before the next meeting. So between now and then, as we learn from the board, who the proponents are, you know, as we get more clarity, we can build that into the agenda. And those are conversations we can have offline. While we can't deliberate, we can at least exchange information about what we might put on the agenda. Does that answer your question, Mike?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Kim?
In talking about this, it makes me think, and Kara, this might be something we're going to talk about as we talk through the agenda, but I guess I want to be cautious. There may be folks who want to raise issues or concerns with us, but don't necessarily want to take on the role of proponent and carry it through. So I just want to be sensitive to that I don't want people to feel that if they raise an issue, you know, the expectation is, okay, here you go, you know, it's yours. So depending on what it is and who it is, there may be different levels of involvement.
Absolutely, I agree. I'll say that, like, with the situation of Sarah McCabe, I didn't presume that she wanted me to bring her letter to this committee until I asked her. Um, and uh, and so I think anybody who would raise an issue, whether it comes to the attention of the town manager, or the board of selectmen, or me as the chairperson, I would have a communication with that person about how do we bring this to the table. I have no problem bringing it anonymously, bringing it in some other context. But I just think I want more information before we start pursuing a stance on it in a formal way. Okay. So this conversation, you know, we've included in these conversations talking about getting different perspectives on issues. And I think that while diversity and inclusion and the reasons that this committee was formed several years ago are hugely broad, all the stuff that's coming up recently, the context that we're living in this country right now, we're talking very specifically about diversity and inclusion in the presence of systemic racism. And I don't think that this committee is a committee that is about systemic racism. I also do believe that in order to acknowledge some of these things that we're looking at changing, we really do need to understand the historical context of what we're talking about. So I think that already, you know, we've raised issues and questions amongst the 7 of us about, you know, is this something for us to talk about? Is this true? What does this have to do with us? You know, so there's a level of variability amongst just the few of us in opinion, knowledge about these 2 topics, just these 2 topics that we've raised. And I think we're going to raise a lot of topics over time. We're talking about, you know, we mentioned at the start of this, we're talking about police brutality and systemic racism in the police department. A member of the police department sits on this committee. We work, hi Mike, we work so closely with the police in so much of what we do in this town. This is not a group that is designed to be, we're talking about what is, you know, we are not the deciders of what is right and what is wrong. We are not, that is not what we're here to do. And we all need to make recommendations that are in line with our individual, you know, we come to this as individuals. We come to this committee with beliefs, opinions, and life experiences that we probably know very little about, looking at each other and knowing us, the little that we do. But that informs what we bring to this committee and how we're making decisions and what recommendations we have and how we vote on any particular item. And I think in order to be able to be as unified as we possibly can in our decision making and our recommendations, we also need to be able to talk about this kind of hard stuff. And it doesn't mean we're going to take the conversation down a rabbit hole and make conversations harder than they need to be. But it does mean that I want to make this a place where people can let us know where you are, wherever that is, and that we can talk about it in as much of a respectful way as possible without judging. Very hard to do when we're talking about an issue of racism. We can't talk about racism without talking about power and privilege. I identify as white. I perceive the majority of us, and not all of us around this room, as white. There is an innate tension about all of these things that we're talking about. People are going to come into this conversation with variable levels of comfort, discomfort, and feelings across the board. And I just want to acknowledge that and say it's fine. And we can't pretend that we don't have feelings about this stuff. I'm a therapist, I'm a social worker, so I'm fine with feelings. This isn't a feelings group, but they're there, we have them. Mike, what would you like to say?
No, I was just going to echo, you know, some of the things that you were saying. And what I've been finding, you know, obviously being a person of color and then also being a police officer, there's kind of a there's a conflict going on inside me because, and, you know, I've lived in Westborough the majority of my life. So, you know, some of the things that you're talking about, I think from my perspective, I think people want to support, you know, each other. They just don't know how. they don't know what avenue to pursue. And, you know, of course, as you said, you know, one of the things is, you know, people, we need to open up conversation. And yes, it's uncomfortable. We all need to acknowledge that it's uncomfortable, but conversation is what's going to bridge the gap between, you know, everyone. So I think right now where we are as a committee, I mean, I know that we're just starting up, but I feel more purpose now. I'm seeing it from my point of view that we should be the people that the community comes to for issues like, you know, hey, you know, we have an issue with the town seal or whatever it is, and then we you know, reach out to other people to see, you know, the schools, the police departments, to see how it's going to affect everyone townwide, and then, you know, we help, you know, make decisions or give opinions on what we think. And so I feel really good about these conversations that we're having, and I think it's an awesome step. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you very much. I just think conversation is, I mean, dialogue is what leads to change, and we can only build bridges if we keep on listening to each other and really listening to understand. And that's what we're here to do. That's going to mean that we're going to listen to opinions that are not our own. And not only from members of the public, but from each other. We're not going to see eye to eye on all of these things. And that's okay. And my goal is to keep that conversation going in a way that feels safe and productive. To that end, I will redirect conversation or interrupt conversation if I sense or get feedback from one of you that this is not safe or productive. I encourage each and every one of us to do what we need to do as human individuals to take care of ourselves in the midst of these conversations. So if that means stepping off of the call for a bit to, you know, take a break and coming back, I support that. But I want the conversation to keep going. And one of the best ways to keep the conversation going is for us to all continue to learn together. And so I want to talk about not only how do we keep these conversations going, but how do we kind of pursue education around these issues. Just to be very concrete, I am recommending that our committee pursue some education specific to issues of better understanding the history of systemic racism, exploring internal bias, unconscious bias, and by doing that, gather some shared language that we can use with each other so we better understand where each other is coming from. It's no secret at all that my larger goal is to have such training instituted across the town for all town employees and all committee members and volunteers, etc. I think there's a role for us in recommending around that as well, of this committee, to make recommendations for that. In order to make such a recommendation down the road to that end, I think we kind of have to put our, what's the phrase, money where our mouth is, or whatever that is, right? Like we have to walk the walk. So if we're gonna think about recommending anti-bias training or some training about the historical context of systemic racism to other people, we need to do it ourselves. So I have some thoughts and some ideas about how we might get that kind of training as a committee. But before I launch into that, those specifics, I'd like your thoughts and comments about what I've said so far. Shelby.
So couldn't agree more. I think I've heard education 100 times already on this call. I would love to hear from you, Kara, or anyone else, but Kara, I think you have tremendous knowledge and experience here as to what are trusted, accepted professional resources for learning. I know that I personally have undertaken, through the powers of Facebook, and some links that I've traveled to a diversity and resiliency training on anti-racism, which is an online free course through the Institute of El Paso. I just started it today, and it's fascinating. I'd be happy to share the link. It's free training available to anyone through July 2nd. I try to do my best research on like what is the Institute of El Paso to make sure it was a legitimate organization, but it is CEU level training for social workers and others. So, and it's you know, for a non-professional in that field, it's been great. I mean, there are videos and it's interactive, but you can go at your own pace. Whoops.
There we go. I'm sharing it now.
Oh, that's cut it out. That's too funny. There it is.
You read my mind.
Oh my God, this was not planned, folks, I have to say.
Nope.
The other thing that's a little more lengthy, a friend of mine had shared, which again, I think we can always learn more, is Yale University offers a free online course. It's pre-recorded, but it's intended to be like 13 weeks, 2 hours a week, go at your own pace. And it's, I think it's more the history and context from, it feels like it, again, I haven't delved into that. This feels like it's more kind of, how can I learn about anti-racism today and implement that in my kind of daily life and change words and vocabulary and actions. That seems like more of a true history class. So I'm not sure it would be as engaging for everyone. So anyway, that's
Thank
my
you. I think, Alma, were you raising your hand? No, you're talking to somebody else. Sarah.
If you could share both of those links, that would be really helpful. I know the school districts are trying to figure out different PDs that we can take, especially if that one is free through July 2nd. I would love to be able to send that out to the schools and say, here's our first one, check it out.
So I'm sharing right now. You can go to D as in David, RIEP as in Paul.org. And then they have a tab for anti-racism training. It is a 6-hour training. It's mostly videos. The videos run anywhere from 2 minutes to 15 minutes long. You can stop and start as you need. It is free through July 2nd. You can pay $30 if you want CEUs for your profession, like I will be. And I am about a third of the way through, and so far it's excellent. It is designed, as you see here, for the first mod. It's split into 3 2-hour modules. The first one is about history, our country's history of racism and how it has been built into the systems of our country. The second module is about looking at our own personal biases and prejudices. And the third module is like, now what do we do that we have this knowledge? How do we incorporate this into the work that we do? I don't feel like it's within my power to mandate that all the members of this committee watch it or participate. I know that between now and July 2nd, it might be hard to carve out 6 hours, but I strongly recommend and encourage all of us to do this and to bring back our learning to the next session. Yes, Rana.
So I'm full of awe and admiration for all of you who can sit and do this by themselves. I am incapable of doing it by myself. I would, if there would be a leader to go through it with somebody, I would absolutely embrace that. But I just am incapable of sitting more by myself and doing something. It just ain't gonna happen, and I wish that it would. But if there's another way for us to do it, I would embrace that.
We can find another way, Sarah.
Thank you. I'll look forward to it.
I am completely willing to do it and take extensive notes to share as well. If that's helpful.
So I want you to know that this is just the beginning of a conversation about this training. I've been talking with Kim in the context of her role in HR about broader and in-person trainings, live trainings. And now in person, I guess that doesn't happen, but live trainings, right? In person will happen someday, and we will aim for that. But thinking about live trainings as well. So before we leave the issue of this particular training, let me think about it, Rana, but I think what I could potentially do Oh, probably can't do it before the 2nd. I don't know how much this costs after it's free, how much it's going to be afterwards, but I would be totally willing to kind of open it up to a small group of people and sort of facilitate discussion as we watch the videos together. I'd be happy to do that, but I won't be able to do that between now and the 2nd because I'm taking a few days off. Kim, what's your thought?
The challenge becomes with anything like this, trying to do it in small groups. We have to operate under open meeting law.
Open meeting law.
So I think that any educational resources that anybody becomes aware of and would like to share with this group, we're not deliberating, we're not expressing our opinions, you're just making others aware of resources. It's fine to communicate those with the group. But it seems like trying to figure out a way to do the training in smaller groups, we just need to be aware that we do as a public body operate under open meeting law.
So
thank you,
Kim, in that regard though, just if a member of this group, let's just say myself, I said, great idea, and there are 7 other people not affiliated with this group, but it's Ron and myself and just other people that are watching this that want to be part of it. People can, I just want to be clear, we can do that. We can't just, it would have to be careful to have a quorum of this body in one training.
Right.
I mean, right,
although if you can certainly do that, trainings, attending a scheduled training or an event, if a quorum were to attend, you just have to not have any deliberation, any discussion, because practically there are times when things exist where a quorum of a committee might want to go, as long as you don't deliberate. I think, Shelby, what you're thinking, in my mind, if somebody wants to pair up and have a study buddy and go through this together, there's no violation there. There's no issue there. Just if we try to do it as a more organized group, I think that becomes challenging because people have different styles of how they absorb material. And I think, this lends itself, because it's an online training, I think it lends itself to sort of an individual piece, but certainly if you want to reach out and go through this with other folks, that's fine.
Yeah,
Ronna,
and
what I
think-
could do to support your need is say that if you know anybody who has a Zoom account and can do what I just did, which is share my screen. Like if we weren't in an open meeting, in a public forum, and I was doing with my friends, I could call up a Zoom. I could have all my friends sitting here on Zoom, and then I could share my screen and start and stop the videos and we could chat about it. So if you have any, and I'd be happy to talk to you offline just about how the function of the Zoom works and that kind of thing, if you're interested in that. For me, I just, my partner and I are both working from home. So, I start and stop the videos and I say, did you hear that? Did you know that da, 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 da? So, I mean, I get it. Like it's impactful stuff, and it stirs up thoughts and questions and feelings. And it really is something that is nice to talk to people about. But I know that this is not the ideal learning forum. It's just one that is available to us right now for free. Take it if you want it, run with it. It's so far really good quality. That said, I also have a meeting, not next week, but the following week, with an organization called Visions Inc. out of Dorchester. The town of Hopkinton invited Visions Inc. twice in the last year to come and meet with they first came and met with a whole bunch of town personnel, members of law enforcement, the town administrators, youth and family services, and others to do some anti-bias training and some systemic racism training. And then they came back in the last couple of weeks of school and met with a bunch of students via Zoom. And I've heard good things about them. Sarah, you're nodding like crazy. Do you know Visions? What do you know about them?
Through Hopkinton, actually, I know a teacher over there. So
Okay.
It was very powerful for the students.
Thank you. That's really nice to have that endorsement. So their website is visions-inc, so visions-inc.org. If you want to check them out. Yes, Rana.
It's also Facing History in Ourselves, which is part of the curriculum at the high school, actually. that does a whole bunch of anti-bias stuff, I believe. Right. It's
Yeah,
out
I
of,
know that.
it's out of Boston, I believe.
Okay.
I
Sarah,
think.
have you been part of that training through the school department at all? Okay.
No,
I know that Superintendent Bach has brought in trainers to do some of this kind of training with some of the school department staff. So she could be a resource for some trainers too. Alma, were you wanting to say something? Alma, if you're talking to us, okay, and I don't think you are. Okay, Shelby, yes.
Yes, so some of you may be familiar with the community training that was a collaborative, it has been a collaborative effort. It was called Square One on substance use and youth and family. It was a collaborative effort between the Rotary Club and Youth and Family Services and Westborough Connects, and I'm probably leaving someone out, Kara.
The schools.
Oh, the schools, sorry, I thought I said that first,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, maybe you did, yeah.
So I would, once we have, as a committee, have a better baseline, just even a small baseline from which to come from, I would love to see us as a committee bring some sort of education to the community. And for a while, it might have to be online through a community Zoom or something like that. Much like actually a recent one was done as part of the Square One initiative. So I think that would be a way for, and we might be able to get some buy-in from other groups in town that would want to support that. So go ahead.
Yeah, I do not want to squash that idea at all. I might risk squashing it a little bit by saying that is a little outside of the scope of this committee. That said, I am in conversations with Westborough Connect in my role as Youth and Family Services about how to do some stuff like that.
So however that comes about, maybe we,
yeah.
Maybe we support that it's happening and another group is doing it as opposed to leading it. I mean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of how we place ourselves in conjunction to that. I don't think it has to be something we ignore by any stretch. It wouldn't be something that we'd want to take the lead on. So with that, I would say, please take advantage of this resource. I will email to you the link, even though I know I wrote it. I'll send it to you too, just so you can have an easy click to get to it. And then we'll bring that learning with us to our next meeting in a month to inform our conversations. Right now, I don't know about you, but I'll share it with you. I want to back up a little bit and say, we'll end this meeting by 4:30. I want to take a minute to say that, I'm a social worker and I was raised by social workers. And I started studying social work when I was 18 years old. And I am sort of like innately bred to be liberal and thinking about all kinds of communities and to think about diversity and to be non-judgmental and to consider everyone with unconditional positive regard. And within the last decade, issues of racism and anti-racism have come up for me in ways that I never could have imagined. And I've sort of launched myself into my own learning about how to do better at undoing racism within myself and in this world. And it's not an easy journey. And I thought that I was pretty far along given my upbringing and my professional background. And I recognize that I still have a long ways to go. I have a long ways to go to become a better ally, to do better in understanding the history that I was not taught growing up in the era that I've grown up. And so I say all this, I self-disclose all this to say that there's no wrong place to start this process, and that it's a humbling process no matter where you're at. And the way that the learning happens best is when we share our vulnerabilities with each other around the learning process. So I just want to set that as like sort of a standard, like there's no wrong place to be in this process. And we'll learn together. And that's all we can do and expect and of each other. And I think it's kind of a cool opportunity that we have this group as a natural platform to do some of this work, to hold each other accountable, to hold the town accountable, to grow and learn as individuals and to share that learning on a wider level. It's awesome that we have the momentum that we have in the town right now, that the public is interested in this. And so I think that there might be some discomfort that comes along the process. In fact, I kind of hope that there is, because that's where the learning edge is. But I think there's really a wonderful opportunity. So I might be kind of a broken record when I talk about education and conversation, but I think that is where it's at, and not to take away from the concrete work we're making to look at policies, procedures, practices, to make recommendations. They're going to happen simultaneously, and I'm really excited to be able to do all that with you, and I appreciate you being in it together with us.
You're a great leader for the group.
Well, I stumbled into this role, but I will do my best to make the most of it. So I see you right now. Let's wrap up our next steps and make sure we know what we're doing between now and our next meeting, and we'll kind of get an idea of when that next meeting is going to happen. Oh, the piece about engaging the public. Shoot, we skipped that. Let me just touch on it, and then we'll go to it next time. We have created, we being the town, Mark Stockman, our IT director, has created an email address for this committee, diversity@town.westborough.ma.us. I will see that it is put on the webpage for this committee within the next couple of weeks. I will make sure that our webpage is updated, because right now it is not. So I will work on that in the next couple of weeks, and I will start advertising that email address in a widespread way and give it to you to advertise it also. And what we'll have to put this on the agenda for next time to talk about how to engage the public, since sorry, I missed being able to launch into that, but we can start with this email address so people can email us between meetings, and maybe we can even find a way to use it during meetings if we ever decide that would make sense to us to engage the public in the process. And we'll talk about how to do that in other ways too. But that's at least one step to take, is to start this email. So we'll do that. So I'll get that email up, the web page updated. I'm going to meet with Visions about live trainings. We're going to all do this other online training on our own. I'm going to invite Sarah McCabe to come to our next meeting. We're each doing our own little homework about what's going on larger levels around the Columbus Day issue. And we're going to find out what's happening as far as a meeting with the Board of Selectmen to talk about the town seal. And I'll try, at least for me, to be a part of that, if not everybody else. Did I miss anything as far as next steps? All right. So we used to meet on the third Tuesday at 5 o'clock, given that many of us are still working remotely. And given that there are a lot of other meetings happening on Tuesdays right now, I am going to suggest that A, we steer away from Tuesday meetings, and B, if it's possible to meet before 5 o'clock, I would appreciate that too. So what are people's thoughts about that?
I
Fine,
agree.
fine by me.
Sarah, I actually liked how you sent us out an email giving us 3 dates. I think that works best for everyone, at least for me.
I think eventually, like before it's too long, we're going to need to set a kind of a every month at this time. Kim, you look like you might have thoughts about this. Any input about meeting time?
inability to plan is what's like getting really frustrating because we just don't know how long are we going to be meeting remotely. My suggestion might be if today we could tentatively, or, you know, people are able to look at maybe July and August, try to pick the next two meetings out. If I had to guess, if I had a crystal ball, I could see us having to meet remotely through the summer. So maybe if we, I don't know, does this date and time, the Thursday in this time slot, work well for people?
Second Thursday at 3 o'clock, that would be.
That's the 9th?
So that's July 16th and August 13th.
Fine.
Thumbs
by
up.
me.
Thumbs down. I don't think we need a formal vote, just a general idea. All right, I'm gonna go for July 16th and August 13th. If it happens that suddenly everybody's gonna be gone in those dates, well, summer's tough, I know, but the summer might be easier than most. So we're gonna have on the agenda Sarah McCabe report back about the things that we just talked about, and we're going to talk about membership and public engagement.
And
Okay.
Kara, if anything comes up between now and that meeting, a potential addition.
Addendum in an email so that they're readily approved by the next meeting.
I will make an effort to aim for about a week in advance.
Okay.
Maybe just shy of a week in advance so that
Yeah.
people can make adjustments to the proposed agenda as needed.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I know we'd be well within, well, that's fine. That's totally fine. Yeah.
Just so you have several days to make modifications as needed. As long as I post the meeting, you know, within that 48, 2 business days ahead of time, I'm good. If I need to change the agenda, that's okay.
I just think with a group that, what I was going to say is, like, I think with a group that meets monthly, I think it's really important to have minutes ready for that next meeting that are posted so the public can follow along.
Oh,
as
minutes
opposed to-
posted.
Yeah,
Okay,
minutes.
sorry.
Yeah,
Minutes,
sorry.
not
If I said
just
agenda,
agenda.
I was thinking
Yeah.
minutes and I'm just tired.
Okay. I'll chat with
Okay.
Alma about that. Thank you, Alma, for taking notes. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I'm excited for the work we're going to do together.
Amen.
Are you looking for
Enjoy
a
the
motion to
sunshine.
adjourn?
Oh, yeah, I need a motion to adjourn. I
Okay.
forget these things.
So moved.
Tim moves to adjourn and Shelby seconds. All right, Rana, you're first to vote. Adjourn.
Amen.
Mike.
Roll call
Okay,
vote.
we'll take his thumbs up as a yes. Sarah, adjourn. Yes, no. Thumbs up, yes. Shelby,
Yes.
yes. Alma, adjourn. Thumbs up, yes. Kim,
Yes.
yes. And Kara, yes. We are adjourned.